Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Colts Cover 2 podcast. I am IndyStar Colts insider Jim Ayello, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host and fellow Colts insider, Joel A. Erickson. And Joel, you have exciting breaking news to tell us here. Joel just finished off the April's NFL draft. He went into the future, embodied Chris Ballard, and just destroyed. Joel, tell us how you did it.
Well, I think our listeners know that I've got a fondness for the online websites that let you draft and trade at the same time. And I was pulling up actually the first one really since they started free agency. So I traded out the 34th pick. So
Very Chris Ballard move. Very Chris Ballard move of you, yeah.
Yeah, traded. Well, I mean, I wanted more picks. I was down to 7. I didn't like that. I wanted to have more.
Joel too loves them picks.
But the good news was that when I got to the 44th pick, Jordan Love was still there, so I took him.
Nice. Very good. Not going to happen in real life, but hey, we like this. Alternate future.
None of this is going to happen in real life. I promise. People listening to this are going to be like, this is getting weird. This is getting more and more unrealistic the further you go. So 3 picks after that, because when I traded down, I think I got the 15th pick of the second round and the 27th pick of the second round. So with the 15th pick of the second round, just 3 picks after Love, I took Neville Gallimore.
Nice. Get blown up the inside line. Yeah.
We're just going full interior rush this year in Indianapolis. We're just going to bolster that. Then the 27th pick of the second round, I got Denzel Mims.
Nice. Oh, Colts fans are going to like that one.
Yep. Wide receiver, quick, goes up and gets the ball, been blowing up the pre-draft process, great at the senior role. You saying, you know what, you didn't get a tight end yet, Joel. What are you going to do without a tight end? Well, guess what? 11th pick of the third round, Cole Kmet, tight end, Notre Dame.
The top tight end on a lot of people's boards, and Joel gets him in the third round. What a steal.
Yep. But here's the best part. I just addressed wide receiver and tight end, and I haven't even gotten to the point where I addressed both positions again with the 25th pick in the 4th round after trading down again.
Unbelievable. I
got Chase Claypool.
Oh, so you addressed both positions with that one draft, with that one pick.
Yep. He can play both.
Man,
tight end suddenly is like we're playing four guys there, doing whatever you want, and you're like, man, it's a lot of offense, not a lot of defense. Well, Fisher's own Jeremy Chin was available early in the 5th.
Wow.
Picked him up. Now you're saying, Joel, you didn't get any offensive linemen. Well, and this is the part, okay, I'll full disclosure. When I get down to this part of these mock drafts, I don't know exactly who a lot of these people are. But I took a tackle named Ben Barch from St. John's.
Okay.
I took a guard named Damian Lewis from LSU in the 5th and 6th rounds. With my second 6th round pick, I traded down again. And then I got a corner and a linebacker because I just assumed Ballard's going to take a linebacker.
Yeah, probably. He does at least once a year. So, yeah, good assumption.
So I think the big weakness there is no corners. And this will get us maybe off of the silly and back into the what's going on with the Colts. But if I was looking at it, the one thing I want maybe just knowing what we know now before any other signings is I probably wish I had a corner a little higher.
Yeah, that's, Joel, I was going to give you an A+ grade for that draft, but because you didn't get a corner, it's going to have to be an A-. I'm sorry. So.
Well, they don't need corners because Denzel, Cole, and Chase are going to put up so many points.
Yeah, and Gallimore and Buckner are going to sack the quarterback twice a series, so you're good.
Yeah.
No, I do.
I want to make this really clear. What I just said is definitely not going to happen.
Yeah.
This is a bad algorithm.
And what I want to say is you need to text Chris Ballard right now and be like, listen, I can help you in April. Just listen to me.
I fixed it.
No, in all seriousness, there's plenty of Colts news to get into right now. I mean, we got some quarterback moves, some kind of expected, some unexpected. Like you referenced the corner moves, a little bit unexpected. We got offensive line moves and non-moves. And then we got some receiver talk, and then I mean, there's plenty to get into. But let's start kind of with what you talked about is Pierre Desir. I mean, I think you wrote. I mean, he didn't see this coming. We weren't the only people that were kind of a little bit blindsided by this. Now, listen, he didn't have a very good year, but I don't think we were thinking he was going to get cut because of it, and I know he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. I mean, people who've been reading us know that I talked to him 2 days before he got cut about a donation he made, a charitable donation he made to the St. Louis Food Bank of 20,000 meals. And I talked to him on the phone for it. And then a couple days later, he's released. And coming from his camp, not from Pierre, I know that they were blindsided is a good word. They had no idea it was coming. And really, it seems like the Colts are probably now, they did spend a lot in the first couple days of free agency. They did. And everyone had talked about how them having $85 million in cap space. And depending on who you look at, they're somewhere between 27 and 30 now after releasing Desir and Hoyer, so they're probably around 20-ish.
Yeah.
But even at 20-ish, you don't necessarily need to release Pierre Desir. There's still room to go do stuff if you want to. And the other thing is just now they're very, very young at that cornerback position and pretty thin too. The Colts like what Rockison did probably more than fans did towards the end of the season. So he'd be one starter, and then you obviously have Kenny Moore playing the slot. But the other outside spot it's really right now the way it would look. It would come down to either Marvell Tell or Quincey Wilson, and I think we all know how little the Colts played Quincey Wilson last year, and Marvell Tell is kind of on his way up. So there's not a lot of depth there and not a lot of experience.
Yeah, I will tell you this: if Quincey Wilson is starting corner week 1 next year, I'll be stunned. I think I'll be more stunned than after they cut Pierre Desir. I just doesn't. They don't seem to have. I guess I can tell you this: I'm kind of a little surprised Quincey Wilson's still on the roster right now.
Well, not now that I know that. Now that I know that Pierre Desir's not on the team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, you're right. I mean, you got to have something behind it. But I just and to do. I mean, is there any way to look at this cutting Desir as a sign of like, okay, we're going to trust Marvell and Quincey, or do you think there's another move coming?
I assume that there's another move coming, either in the draft or in free agency. I really don't like the options that are out there in free agency right now.
It's a good time to plug your story, though. You did have a story come out today that kind of gives 5 needs for the Colts and kind of lays out what the options are in terms of free agency. So if people want to know what's out there and what Joel doesn't like in terms of the corners, you can go read that on IndyStar.com.
Yeah, so it's basically older guys. I do like Logan Ryan. The problem with Logan Ryan is he's best in the same position that Kenny Moore excels at. And, I mean, it would be pretty odd for a team that likes its linebackers as much as the Colts do to just go full dime so they can get the best out of Logan Ryan and Kenny Moore. So that's I do like him, but he's got an issue with position. You're either looking at guys who've got a lot of tread on their tires, like Prince Mukamara or Xavier Rhodes, or you're looking at guys who are younger, kind of more in Chris Ballard's normal free agent plays, but they don't have great resumes. I'm talking about guys like Darryl Worley or P.J. Williams, guys that were second, third-round picks-ish who haven't produced a ton so far but have played. And it's just kind of you don't like those options if you're starting them.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know. One of the guys you referenced, and I was texting you about him last night, and I don't know if that was the influence as to why you made it into your article or not. But I was talking to you about Xavier Rhodes. You and I have discussed this, I think, on the podcast before, how critical relationships have been in terms of, free agent landing spots and having previous relationships with guys and things like that. And Xavier has that. He worked with both Jonathan Gannon and Alan Williams, Colts DB's coaches, in Minnesota. I know he's coming off a rough year, for sure. And he's, I think, 29.
He is. I think he'll be 30 by the time this team starts.
Okay. And like I said, it's not a guy that I'm banging the table over or anything like that. But I just, it's one of those.
He'll be 30 by the time the season starts. His birthday's in June.
He does have a lot of starting experience. He does know the DB's coaches here. Therefore, he knows the defense. Plays some man-to-man. Kind of fits. But like you said, it's maybe not an overwhelmingly, amazing option in that way.
Maybe if he's a 1 or 2 year deal, I like it more.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I don't know what Xavier's looking for in terms of his next commitment. That's for sure. He just got released by Minnesota, I think, last week. So not sure.
Yeah, if he's well, and then now that we're talking about this sort of makes me wonder if this is one of those Justin Houston situations where he gets released and then it gets slow played and then it happens early in the next week. So now I'm wondering if you might be onto something.
Coming around on it, okay.
But yeah, I don't know. It seems to me that, like, you know, getting criticized by Mike Zimmer last year, who's really good.
Yeah, but he criticizes everybody. He criticizes everybody.
Well, maybe that's true. I don't know. It feels weird. It feels a little bit weird to me for them, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I
do think they need to add somebody, though, and you want somebody in. Do you want somebody, like, do you want a younger guy or do you want an older guy? And it just depends on the tape. The hard part with older guys is that the tape can lie to you a little bit because their body might be going a little bit, you know, and what they were last year might not be what they are this year.
Yeah, I can't decide. It's one of those guys that, like exactly like you said, or he's one of those guys who wants to prove he shouldn't have been cut. You know, I mean, we all know what Justin Houston said about Kansas City, and then we all know what actually happened in Kansas City, which Justin was just like, you know, you want to cut me, this is what happens, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Right, but I guess my counter to that would be to say that pass rushers have a better history of playing well into their 30s than corners do.
For sure, no doubt about that. And I'm with you. I mean, if you're talking about more than 2 years, I'm probably out. I just it's something that, you know, or, you know, if you just a 3-year deal with like one guaranteed essentially, then fine. But I don't think it should be a big commitment, but I do like the idea of bringing in a veteran experienced corner, or especially around all these young guys. A guy, again, talking about friction. They've talked about that. Ballard's talked about that a lot. I kind of like the idea of somebody like Xavier Rhodes in that way. And then, you know, you also, but again, it's going to be up to their evaluation as to what, you know, they think he has left in the tank.
Right. I also don't know how much his zone coverage has been part of it. When I think of Xavier Rhodes, I think of him being following guys across the field and playing man-to-man. I don't know how good he is in zone. I'm trying to find it right now. I'm trying to find something on it, but not necessarily getting something that's going to be easy. So
I will say, size-wise, at 6'1", he kind of fits the profile.
Yeah, no, that does. He doesn't really take the ball away very much.
That's the thing. Yeah, when you and I were texting about this yesterday, he's not an interception machine. Which, to be fair to him, nobody on the Colts really was a turnover machine outside of Darius Leonard.
Chris Ballard did say, and in his post of the season wrap up, that was one thing. That was there were two things that he really wanted to improve on the defense. They didn't have enough pass rush, and they needed to take the ball away more.
100%. I will say he did force a fumble last year, but like you said, no picks. Only one interception in 2018. In terms of fitting the profile of Colts guys they're bringing in this year, he hasn't really missed many games. I think he's only missed 2, 4, 5 games over the last 6 years.
Yeah, he's very durable.
Yeah, so he starts most of these games. Yeah, and like I said, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's one of those guys that you can transition and try to get him to play a little slot. And that's you know, I've been focused a lot on the question you asked Chris Ballard at the end of the year, which was, you know, Kenny Moore went down and the defense fell apart, which is 100% true. I don't think you can pin it all on that. I think there were some other factors, but there's no question that when Kenny left that defense, that things went south. And I think you have to have somebody who you feel confident you can slide in there and at least do the job of keeping that team from completely falling off a table. And now I think Chris's answer was, you know, it's a backup position, so you can't focus too much on it, but we do need to get better play out of whoever does replace him. So that's why, for me, at corner, all offseason, I've been focused on guys who I consider versatile. So a guy like Logan Ryan I like a lot because I think he can play outside. As you said, definitely better in the slot. But also can play a little safety. And I think that's the kind of guys that Chris might like, or Matt Eberflus might like, in terms of guys who can just move all over the defense. But, you know, if they think Xavier Rhodes is a guy who can line up on the outside, help develop Marvell Tell, help develop Quincey Wilson if he's still here, help develop Rocky Sin, then also maybe play in the slot if something happened to Kenny, then that makes the fit more appealing to me.
Logan Ryan does take the ball away too, or he already has.
Oh yeah, last year he was machine. I mean, just incredible in terms of forced fumbles and interceptions last year. But
so I could see that if you bring him in as an outside guy, and then if something happens to Kenny or Logan Ryan, then Marvell Tell's playing the reserve role he was last year.
Right.
I could kind of see that. I do know though. I think that everyone's saying about Logan Ryan is that he thinks he needs to get at least $10 million a year, and that I don't know if they pay that. Could be wrong.
I will say this: 4 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. He coming off of that season, he might deserve to get paid $10 million a year. Now, is he that guy consistently? Probably not, right?
No, because the 2 years, you don't have interceptions in the 2 years before that.
Right. Yeah, he had a bunch of picks in New England for a while, and then didn't do much the last couple of years until last year with 4 interceptions in his walk year. So interesting. I will say this: he also kind of fits the mold of veteran expatriates, right? You got Jabal Sheard, Kenny Moore, Brian Hoyer. Those are all guys who have all come over from New England that Chris has signed.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it would be interesting. I just think they definitely need to get into the corner market in some way. I've always been one of those guys that likes that when you sign free agents, you sign enough free agent depth that it's I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But essentially that it's that you when you go to the draft, you can kind of do whatever you want. You know what I mean? You're not pigeonholed. You're not trying to draft or force something. You have enough depth with your veterans that you can kind of make anything work or close to anything work. And then with the draft, you can try to enhance or buffer those things.
Right. Yeah, that is something. I don't necessarily know that Ballard does that as much, or at least he didn't necessarily last year because they only signed a couple of free agents.
Right.
But I've always sort of subscribed to that too. That you sign people in free agency so that if you make draft picks, so that when you get to the draft, you don't feel like you have to do anything. And then if somebody takes a little bit longer to go, then maybe it's not a big deal.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about now the offensive line, because I think in terms of the draft, and we'll get to quarterbacks. I know that's a big topic for everybody, but you guys already know Phillip Rivers will be starting next year. We'll get to the Hoyer and kind of Brissett fallout in a little bit here, but I do want to talk about the offensive line just because their 5 are set, right? But they have very little depth. And last week, I think if Colts fans have been paying attention, they saw that the Colts, they first lost Joe Haeg, they brought back LaRaven Clark, and then they lost Josh Andrews. So right now, in terms of veterans, with who played for them or who was on the active roster last year, they have 1 backup behind their 5 starters.
And maybe more importantly, of the guys that they had on the roster last year, the only 2 guys to take snaps other than the starting 5 were Joe Haeg and Josh Andrews, and they're both gone.
Both gone, exactly. Now, I will say this. A lot of people see LaRaven as a backup tackle, and he is, no doubt. But he also has played some guard in his NFL career. Both tackle spots, both guard spots. I'm not going to say he played either exceptionally well, but he does have some versatility that people, that they lost in Joe Haeg.
So maybe he can replace a little bit of the Haeg role. They definitely need to have somebody. Well, and then I think I tweeted this out over the weekend. But Josh Andrews was pushed last year by a sort of journeyman named Jake Eldridge, who looked pretty good in camp, and they kept him on the roster all year and promoted him to active with like 3 or 4 weeks to go.
Yeah, to
make sure no one got him. So that somebody this offensive line thing, I think it's important, and I thought about this while I was writing. It's in the story about the 5 positions of need that you referenced earlier. That's up on our website. Ballard has had pretty good luck with scrap heap guys on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Andrews is one of those guys. Evan Bain was one of those guys. He played well for the Colts when Kelly was banged up in 2018. Their right guard, Mark Lewinsky, is one of those guys. They got him off the street. He was a 4th-round pick of the Seahawks, but they got him off the street. And so I wonder if maybe the veteran presence that we think they need comes a little bit later, with them sort of knowing that they can get more out of guys who've been cast off by other teams.
That is really interesting. Actually, you bring up Eldridge camp, and he kind of has that same. I mean, he wasn't from Seattle, but he did go to Washington, which makes me wonder if he's got the same that kind of background that Coach Googe brought. Was that what was Coach Googe, right? That brought from Washington, or am I crazy?
I lost you for just a second. So before we talk
Oh, I don't. Yeah, sorry about the glitch there. For some reason, you jumped off speakerphone. I don't really know what happened there. I was saying when they got Glowinski, was it? Oh, you know what? Was it? It was Howard. Was Howard Mudd the Glowinski guy?
Yes, but they got him before I think any of those people were around.
No, but I was
Glowinski,
wondering. Eldridge camp is from Washington, and that's kind of like I know that they like Glowinski trains out there in Seattle with Howard Mudd, and then I was wondering. I don't know. Is Eldridge camp one of those guys too that was out there?
Right.
I don't know. I'm asking. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never talked to him about it, to be sure.
Yeah.
I've talked to Glowinski about working with Howard Mudd, but I never talked to Eldridge Camp about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just a thought. Sorry, I had that randomly as we talked. But to your point, maybe you're right. Maybe Ballard is banking on his ability to kind of pluck these guys off the scrap heap and then fill his depth that way. He talked about it at the combine that they were kind of lucky to have had this drafted depth. They had drafted LaRaven Clark, they had drafted Joe Haeg, and he kind of already had that. Behind and to place behind the guys that they did bring in, Glowinski and Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith. So that was kind of the way that the offensive line was built. Now he's going to kind of redo it again. I would expect him to address this in the draft, though.
Yeah, well, he definitely talked about the way he wants to put some drafted developmental guys in the pipeline. So I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we'll see how they do that there. I want to get into the Joe Haeg thing. I mean, I think we talked about this in the story and on I tweeted it out, but according to some of the people that were kind of close to Joe, that this was. I think the Colts were interested in bringing him back. I think they really liked Joe. I just think that Tampa offered him a place where he could potentially start at right tackle, and sign a 1-year contract, and then if he plays well, potentially cash in. I think we've seen a lot of these offensive linemen. Man, when good offensive linemen hit the free agent market, it could be a huge thing for them. So if Joe is able to start and win a job in Tampa, I think he could definitely have a huge market next year. And I don't think that was something the Colts could offer him necessarily, right? I mean, their 5 linemen are pretty set.
Yeah, no, I mean the Bucs have an opening at right tackle, and what you're hoping for if you're Joe Haeg is you're hoping that you get a Glowinski chance, where you get a chance to start and then sign, a 3-year, $18 million, 3-year, $20 million deal, by sort of winning that role and establishing yourself in that role.
Right. So I think that's exactly what. I don't think there was a unwillingness of the Colts to try to. Again, do I know how much money they offered? Did they try to match Tampa? I don't know, but I do know that the Colts showed interest in trying to bring him back, and that Joe loved his time in Indy, but very much wanted to go try to prove that he deserved a little more play time that he was able to get than in Indianapolis. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, let's move on to. I mean, we kind of talked about the offensive line. We talked about that. So let's talk about quarterbacks before we kind of get into what else the Colts need to do in free agency, or at least we think they should do. They made some moves. They cut Brian Hoyer. They have Jacoby Brissett now. Looks like he's going to be the backup. I mean, that's not necessarily a guarantee. They could still do something before the season starts, maybe around the draft. What do you think of cutting Brian Hoyer? What do you think of the quarterback setup they got going in next year?
It's interesting to have a step back, but I sort of understand a little bit. Although, I mean, you could save $9 million. You could have saved $9 million by getting rid of Brissett. But I think if you're the Colts, you like Jacoby better than Brian Hoyer before. So maybe you're looking at it that way. Maybe it's you made the investment and you want to get more look at it. I think in retrospect, the thing that sticks out to me is I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would have given him the deal the way it was structured.
Jacoby, you're
if
talking
you
about.
could go back, Jacoby, if you could go back and do it again, if you maybe front loaded that deal. Although if you front load the deal, then you have less money rolled over, so maybe you're looking at about the same amount of cap anyway, no matter what. But that 2-year deal he signed last year, which they said was to give them a chance to evaluate it. It looks worse when you have to sign a guy to $25 million to start the next year because your evaluation was we need to get better at that position.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back in time and talk about what Chris's mentality was, and then using the hindsight that you're talking about, which I think is fair. I just think it's worth kind of going back and exploring why Chris wanted to do this. I think when Andrew retired, the franchise was kind of thrown into flux for a minute. They needed it to prove to, I think, Colts fans, but more importantly to the Colts locker room, that they truly believed in Jacoby Brissett as a starting quarterback. They bring in Brian Hoyer, who at the time, for a day, was making more money than Jacoby Brissett. I think what they decided was, we need to pay this guy. We need to pay him like a starter because that's what we think he is, and that's what we need our team to think he is going into the year. And then they give him all this money. And I think your point is very valid. It's a little strange, maybe, that given all the cap space they still had last year, they didn't front load the deal to the first year, because that's generally the way Chris tends to operate with his contracts, right?
Yeah, generally. Usually the money's up in the first year.
Well, even if you look at a guy like Jack Doyle, who I don't think they're gonna, I don't anticipate Jack Doyle falling off a cliff anytime soon. I think if you look, he's pretty much paid this year, and then that's it, right? Like, you can almost get out of his contract with nothing else, if I remember correctly. I can look it up unless you remember better than I do.
No, it was something like that. Usually that's what it is. Usually it's they're deals that don't have a lot of risk behind the first year, which really are no risk deals because you're not just cutting somebody randomly.
Well, I mean, Pierre Desir is a good call, right? There was no dead money there. Like that contract he got was essentially a 1-year guarantee for 2019. He got cut with no dead money. Now Jack Doyle got the contract extension. There's guaranteed money for 2020, but after that they can cut him for nothing.
Right. That's usually the way these deals have gone, and that's sort of why you look at it. That's sort of why I'm looking at it now and going, man, 21, because they're going to count something like $55 million against the cap at the quarterback position, and that's why I keep thinking. But then, like I said, the flip side is if you put that money in the front, you wouldn't have carried as much money over. So if you make all the same deals, it's probably the same.
Okay.
I guess the difference would have been if they had just decided to maybe bump his pay last year and then not giving him an extra year on it.
Right, and what Chris has said repeatedly is they gave him that contract in order, one, for the reasons I already talked about, but two, to give themselves time to evaluate. And a 2-year deal to evaluate. And to me, I mean, at least appears that it only took them 1 year to figure it out. At least that's the way it seems to me, now that they've signed Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, no, I don't even think that's really going on a limb. I mean, you don't sign a guy like Phillip Rivers to come in and compete. You sign a guy like Phillip Rivers to start. Yeah,
no, I mean, like I said, I have. There's no. When we talked to Phillip Rivers, via teleconference yesterday, I don't think there was any part of him that was like, "Yeah, I'm here to win the job." I don't think that's what he was. I don't think that's what the Colts told him. I don't think that's why he's here. I think the job is his.
You don't bring in the NFL's number 6 on the all-time passing list to compete for the job.
Right. He's an 8-time Pro Bowler. Okay, like the guy's got the credentials. He's not playing. He's not coming in here to like extend his career and hope to make a little bit more money and maybe compete for a backup job. The guy is here to win a championship or bust. So that's pretty much it. And actually, we can talk a little bit about that and some of the things that stood out to you from the Phillip Rivers press conference. To me, we both wrote stories about it, but for me, the number one thing was he kind of wanted a 1-year deal. Now he didn't get in his agent's way and stop him from signing a 2-year deal, but he's taking this thing year to year. He's 38 years old. He wants to coach his son in high school. Son's going into 6th grade. He's like, you guys can kind of do the math. I don't want to be Tom Brady here, so I think he's going to give him 1 year and hope it's good. And if it is, and he still feels good, he'll try to give him 2. But I'd be surprised if this thing lasted more than 2 years. So what this really means for the Colts is it's buying them time to find the quarterback of the future.
Yeah, I thought he sort of walked back a little bit, or maybe didn't confirm the initial reports from it sounded like what Daniel Jeremiah's conversation with him from the day he signed, saying he hopes it's more than a couple years. He kind of walked that back. We gave him the opportunity to say that, and he decided not to. He did say he's probably not going to be Tom Brady because he'd like to coach his kid. His kid, I think, is a sixth grader, so that's coming up. That's not as far off as it seems if your kid's a sixth grader if you want to coach him in high school. So,
right.
By the way, I just as an aside, like, if Phillip Rivers retires, like if he plays 2 more years and then he retires this kid, his oldest, going into play football and as a freshman, like if you're a high school, do you just like if you're a high schooler in that community, you're just like, okay, so sorry, head coach.
Yeah, you're fired. That's it.
I mean, is Rivers looking at like a Brett Favre like offensive coordinator for a year situation? Like, what are we looking at here? Because I want to know how that's gonna. Maybe I'm the only person who cares about that, but I want to know, like, how did he just get the job right away? And you just go, hey, it's Phillip Rivers. Sorry, bud.
Well, I mean, you got to do it. You got to do it like Phillip Rivers. You got to walk up to the coach and go, "Shoot, I'm sorry. I'm Phillip Rivers, and look, I've been in the Pro Bowl 8 times, and I'm better than you at this." And you got to say shoot like 6 times while you're doing that.
I mean, yeah, I guess he could be an assistant. That would be the way to do it. You can coach your kid and be an assistant, but it sure sounded to me like he wanted to be a head coach.
Well, he said his dad was a head coach, right? I think that's what he said.
Yeah, it sounded to me like he was getting into it. He wanted to coach his son as a head coach. So, and I would just say that these high schools in Northwest Florida, wherever he is, whenever they make their, unless they got a like state championship winning coach, you got to be very careful about your.
I love you looking out for the. I mean, I don't even know where he's going to play high school ball. They're moving to Indy, right? But I think they have a home in Florida, so I don't know how that's where it's going to be.
I think it'd be Northwest Florida. I think coaches in Northwest Florida who know the Rivers are around.
Get the resumes ready.
Either keep a spot open. Or on the staff at like offensive coordinator, or just make sure you know that if you lose some games that there's someone looking over your shoulder. Yeah,
I think Northwest Florida became like the hotbed of Phillip Rivers fans right now because they're like, okay, if he's really good, he's not coming for my job next year. That's what we need. So I that's a very fair point. But to get back to the NFL, what was your takeaway from the Rivers press conference based on what you wrote and what you saw, or I mean, about his adjustment, I guess, to coming to the Colts?
Well, it's something that people have been talking about basically the last week and a half, and sort of a difficult thing to understand is the NFL is in a weird spot here where the NFL has already said that off-season programs, if they happen, will not start on time.
Right.
They may not happen at all. That's possible. I think all of us are hoping that they do at some point start on time, but they might not happen at all. And that means that the normal time frame for a quarterback to get used to his new teammates and stuff will be condensed, probably into training camp. And so Phillip Rivers, being a 16-year veteran and 8-time Pro Bowler, was already thinking about that when we talked to him, and he'd already texted some teammates trying to build a relationship. That was one of the things that people said Brissett did well, where he got a lot of his leadership, was that people knew all that stuff.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that's it's going to be a little bit tough. Now, he does have the advantage of he knows the offense. I don't think it would have been hard for him to learn the offense anyway, but he does know the offense, and so that part's not hard. But the chemistry, that's the hard part. Not getting time on task with receivers, getting time on task with the offensive line, because the center and the quarterback work very closely together in terms of protection. I think that's the part that's tough to know. With so much uncertainty around when things can get back to normal in the NFL world.
Yeah, and I think that does put, like you said, it does highlight kind of the importance of him already having played in the Frank Reich offense. I mean, he played with him and Nick Sirianni and Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, to a different different amount of years for each one of those guys but for a long time in San Diego. So he said he has a pretty good idea of what they want to do. Now maybe they've added things in over the years, but in terms of kind of picking up the offense, he's not really going to have a lot to learn. Maybe a little bit of terminology and things like that, but he should be able to kind of jump right in. And being as smart a quarterback as I think we know him to be, he should be able to turn on the film of the 2019 Colts and have a pretty good idea of what they're trying to do.
I've got a free agent question for you now.
Hit me. What do you got?
Just came across the Twitter.
What do you got?
Does Steven Gostkowski interest you at all?
No.
Because he is a free agent.
I just saw that. Are they gonna? Are the Patriots?
I don't think so either. I like Chase McLaughlin. I think I've said before, like, if you have a chance to get a young kicker and go with him, you do it. Plus, I would think that you'd want to see, like, he was on ended the season on injured reserve last year, so I think you'd want to get your own doctors to look at him. So I don't think you'd make that move now. But I mean, that's a very how old is Steven Gostkowski? It's a very accomplished kicker.
He was one of the best of his generation for sure. Should I just report Vinatieri to the Patriots now or what?
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Are you crazy? That's the first thing I thought of.
I was thinking more like, if the Colts, do you look at it the other way? But you're probably right. I mean, does that mean that Vinatieri, like, we're getting to the point where, like, his rehab, he'd start to know if he thought he could kick again. Gostkowski is 36. I think 36 is probably getting a little up there for me.
Yeah, he's 36. Chase McLaughlin did nothing but impress, at least to me, since he got here. I don't think you throw that away for a guy coming off an injury, an injured season, who's as old as he is. Yeah, I'm going in the camp with Chase and maybe a younger kid, and just hoping Chase wins the job outright, which I assume he will.
That's interesting. I wonder if there are some Colts fans out there who would be interested in Gostkowski, but I'm kind of with you. I've said all along, I think, that the ideal situation is to get a guy who's young and kind of deal with some of the growing pains the first year, which with McLaughlin they didn't have to because he went through them in other places. And then you've got a guy for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ideal situation, right? Is you get yourself a young kicker and you hold on to him for as long as you possibly can. So I think that's what the Colts will try to do. It's what they hope they have in Chase McLaughlin. Now I'm cheering for is Adam Vinatieri back to the Patriots, because that would be just
You just put it on Twitter. You're actively leading the charge. You're the first person on my timeline. I follow everyone in the NFL, so you're the first person on my timeline to bring up Adam Vinatieri back to the Patriots. I bet that would hurt Colts fans a little bit. I bet it would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. He's there. He was theirs first. No,
I think it would hurt him a little bit. I think they sort of think of him as theirs now, and I don't necessarily know that they'd be too upset about it because of the way he kicked last year. But I think there might be some not nostalgia, just some familiarity pains, just some. Oh, that was supposed to be over. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, how weird would it be though, the year they let Tom Brady go, that they bring in Adam Vinatieri?
Oh, that'd be super weird.
How strange would that be?
That'd be super weird. Like real strange.
Yeah, I'm into it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Jim's whole method of paying attention to the NFL is he wants to watch the world burn.
Yeah, chaos. I want chaos almost all the time. And Tom Brady to Tampa is pretty close.
No, it is. In a way, I almost think it's been underplayed the last week and a half. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's weird because like the NFL kind of has news to itself right now in terms of sports. I mean, but if we weren't dealing with what we're dealing with on a global scale, I think maybe it would have gotten more attention.
That's probably true.
Maybe
because a lot of the sports stories right now are going on the Olympics and like when stuff going to be back and stuff like that. But it did feel like it was a huge story for 2 days, and then it was just kind of gone.
Okay, can we talk about national news, by the way? Have you while we were doing the podcast, that terrible, I'm just going to say it now, the terrible Rams logo came out? What is that?
It's a ram, Jim.
It looks like half a Charger, though.
It's a ram with no mouth.
I don't.
Or eyes, really. I mean, sort of has eyes. But...
Wait, no. Oh, yeah. You're looking at the actual ram with the yellow horns.
Yes.
I don't mind that so much as the LA Rams with the swirl around the LA.
Oh, that does sort of look chargery,
doesn't it?
But here's the thing, though. Like,
are they merging teams and they didn't tell us? Like LA is becoming one team.
No, that's interesting. That's a good point. That's a good point. I think it's maybe that's the way to sell tickets. So you don't sell tickets for two teams, just sell it for one.
They might sell out a stadium then. Yeah, they might get it done. The Chargers certainly could use the boost of, and then who doesn't want to play with Aaron Donald? So.
Exactly.
I don't understand this, Joel. I mean, I know we've been through this. I think a million times, but like, why do teams need to come up with new stuff? Just go back. Like the old Rams jerseys and helmets are awesome. I don't understand.
I'm totally on board with that. I mean, just never change the uniforms.
They're fine.
It's hard enough for me to pay attention to them anyway.
They're really good. Like the old Eric Dickerson Rams uniforms are great. Like, and then I'm gonna beat my head against the table. But give me the old Buccaneers jerseys, please. What are they doing? You have
Jim. I know this is important to you, but I would suggest that maybe the Buccaneers uniforms is not a reason to beat your head against the table.
Those creamsicle jerseys, Joel, are special. They're special jerseys.
They're not self-injury special.
They're not. Yeah, you're right. You're probably right. I think we're all having a hard time adjusting to being in quarantine. And then when I saw the new jerseys coming out, even though, I mean, that Tom Brady logo with him like winking with the pirate hat on and the knife in his mouth, man.
Yeah, honestly, they should just go with that as the logo.
Just in my veins, please. I'll start. I mean, I'm an NFL reporter, and I will cheer for the Buccaneers if that's their logo, like openly. If teams started adjusting their logos to the players on their teams, that would be so much fun.
You keep trying to draw me into these uniform discussions, and you know I don't care.
Yeah, I'm not a big style guy myself, but I just when you have gold like the creamsicle jersey, I just don't understand why you got it.
You care about it 150% more than I do.
Fine, we'll stop talking about it. Whatever. It's fine. All right. Let's go back to other weird NFL quarterback things. How weird is it that Nick Foles takes the Bears a fourth round pick to get, and I think the Washington traded a 5th round pick for Kyle Allen. So how weird is that? One, also knowing 2, Calais Campbell was also traded for a 5th round pick, and 3, after you get over how weird that is, then tell me what you think Jacoby Brissett might get in a trade.
Well, I think he has to get at least a 5th now.
Right, because it's only a 1-year deal, so they're not committed. It's kind of like Kyle Allen. We just looked through his contract. Now he's got 2 years of commitment. He's an exclusive.
And I don't think I would have said that. I think if you said that, I think if you asked me this question before Kyle Allen was traded earlier today, I would have said like maybe a 6th.
Yeah.
If that. And now I'm like, can Kyle Allen really go for? I mean, he's getting paid a lot less than Jacoby Brissett is, but can it really? Can he really count on that?
I don't know. Well, again, Kyle Allen is 1, cheaper, and 2, has 2 years of team control, I think, left, being an exclusive rights free agent this year and a restricted free agent next year. So maybe that's the more appealing part. I'm guessing. But
and then on top of that, throwing Calais Campbell going for a 5th round pick in there is just
yeah.
I've long thought that the deals that happen in trades for position players who are not quarterbacks, the pick is almost always not as valuable as the player. Almost always.
It usually ends up that way, but again, it's about cap space, and it's about how much team control it has and all that stuff too. There are other factors, obviously. So it's.
I mean, I definitely would have given up what the what the Cardinals gave up to get DeAndre Hopkins.
Yes. Every trade made after that trade makes that one look even worse. I mean, Yeah, there's no reason to go. I mean, a second-round pick. I mean, we're talking about what did I just say? A fifth-round pick for Kyle Allen and a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. Does that make sense to you?
No, but the Kyle Allen trade kind of threw everything off for me. Nick Foles with a fourth sort of made sense a little bit because he might be the Bears starter by mid-season.
Right, and he's got the pedigree of a Super Bowl winner.
If not earlier than that.
Yeah.
And you're sort of paying in draft pick for the contract that they just took on. But yeah, no, if Kyle Allen goes for a fifth, I would think you should be able to get a fifth for Jacoby Brissett. But now, if you do that, then you save $9 million against the cap, but you're really only going to be saving like $4 million because you have to go sign a guy.
Right. No, that's true. I don't know. But again, do you think this is the road they're going to go down now? I mean, I think the Colts. I think they like Phillip Rivers, and I know he's been incredibly durable. But he's still 38 years old. So they probably want a veteran that they trust. And you already have Jacoby, so I mean, I guess you could. I mean, to me, if you wanted to get rid of Jacoby, you had the option of keeping Hoyer, and going
right.
and going that road. So it seems to me that at least the read to me is that they have every intention of keeping Jacoby.
Well, and the reports so far have been that's what people have intimated nationally is that their plan is to keep Brissett. Now, could something change? I'm sure. Anybody who's paid any attention to the Colts quarterback situation over the last year or so should know that things can change at the drop of a hat. But yes, I agree. I think that it looks like it's going to be Rivers and Brissett and Chad Kelly before anyone flips us out.
There's no reason that we don't have to bring that up. There's no.
You say that, but every time a quarterback thing happens on my timeline, Chad Kelly gets brought up.
Here's what I'll say.
I'm giving a nod that I'm trying to be a man for the entire fan base.
Okay. Here's what I'll say about Chad Kelly, and it's only in what the way that Chris Ballard dismissed Tom Brady at the Combine. Good career though, is the way it's the same tone in his voice that I hear with Chad Kelly. Anytime somebody asks him about Chad Kelly, he's like, "Yeah, he's fine." It's like, "Oh, okay, you don't like him, I don't think." But I mean, again, I'm just reading into the way guy is talking, but that's the way it sounds to me. Speaking of which, that's worth talking about really fast because I've been asked a few times why Phillip Rivers over Tom Brady. Why do you think? And I think we talked about this before, but now we have the report out there. I think Peter King said that Tom Brady was interested in playing for the Colts, and that interest wasn't reciprocated.
I think it's because Brady doesn't help this team as much as Rivers does.
And how do you mean?
Well, Brady last year, his numbers were more like Jacoby's, just if he gave Jacoby a lot more passing attempts. In terms of completion percentage, a lot of that stuff. A lot of the reasons that I came around on Rivers to the Colts, I think that the numbers aren't quite as stark a difference between Brissett and Brady, and so maybe what you have to pay for him and commit 2 years. Right. You don't think that you don't think that he changes your offense as much as Rivers does. I think Rivers changes it considerably. I'm not entirely sure Brady would.
That's a fair point. I mean, like I said, I saw some numbers compelling about Brady about how he does actually throw when he can throw deep still, and he has thrown deep, and that it was just the Patriots' offense and lack of weaponry that kind of inhibited him. But I do think that there is a point to be made about the 2-year thing. I don't know that they were really willing to commit 2 years to Tom Brady at this point in his career, just in case things had kind of fallen off the table. And I think, like I said, I think the 1-year thing with Rivers makes a lot more sense in terms of trying to just give them flexibility going forward.
Well, and who knows? Maybe Brady would have taken 1 year, but what we've heard so far and what we kind of knew ourselves was the Colts just weren't that interested in Tom Brady, and that's why I think it is.
All right, let's talk about right at the end here. Again, we kind of talked about this before, but you did do a list of free agents. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Before we move on, why don't you're talking about Phillip Rivers now? Why don't you tell people what you're kind of working on right now in regards to Phillip Rivers and his fit in the Colts offense?
Well, I'm just kind of trying to figure out, kind of break down, I think, a little bit more what the difference is between the way Rivers played last year and the way Brissett played last year. Because I've seen a lot of people say, well, they were only half a point apart in terms of passer rating. And it's a really incomplete way to look at it from what I'm looking at right now. Just in terms of there are some things that the biggest reason that they're together in rating is because Brissett doesn't throw interceptions and Rivers did last year. Right. In terms of yardage and explosive plays and how effective they are at throwing the ball once it gets past the 5-yard markers is really different. In the coming days, I'm going to have something on that.
Okay, well, we should all look forward to that. That does sound interesting. Now I'm wondering, too, the way you talked about it, not to pile more work on top of you, but I wonder then how he compares to Andrew Luck in the first year of Frank Reich's system.
Well, I mean, I can look that up. That's not that hard.
Okay.
I'm trying to compare it a little bit. Again, trying to compare Rivers against himself a little bit. Rivers against Brissett, and we're the story sort of goes that I think it's going to be. I think we're going to try to break down a little bit better why he's better for the Colts this year. Given that so many people have said, yeah, but he throws interceptions and his quarterback rating was only half a point better. But I think I'm probably going to touch on some of those other things like Andrew Luck and some of the other stuff.
Okay. Well,
and this is a little bit deeper than this will be a little bit deeper than just time to throw. Some of the stuff that came out right away after he signed last year. This is going to be more about when he throws and how far.
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, I think that's going to be very important because I think that one of the more revealing parts of the Chris Ballard end-of-the-year press conference was when somebody was asking a question about Jacoby, and he kind of talked about that check down versus touchdown mentality and how he needed Jacoby to have more of the touchdown mentality than he had. There is not that concern with Phillip Rivers. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you and I were texting today, and I don't know if you want to really go as far as to say he was playing YOLO ball last year, like Jameis Winston, but he is not afraid to let his receivers go get it. I mean,
I think we can let this stat out as a tantalizing little teaser in terms of throws that went where the ball traveled in the air more than 16 yards last year. So I've kind of broken it into 16 to 30, and then 30 to however far you can throw it. Rivers was third. He had the third most in both of those categories. So yeah, he'll push the ball down the field. He'll push the ball down the field more than most people.
Now my question is to you. I saw, especially in light of that, I think that Colts put out a video of like the top 10 plays of Phillip Rivers last year. I think 8 of them were just Mike Williams going up and being a beast. Mike Williams isn't like a star receiver, but he has a very unique ability of being freakishly athletic and being able to kind of climb the ladder and go get a ball. Much as I like T.Y. Hilton, much as I still believe in Paris Campbell, and like Zach Pascal as a solid receiver, the Colts don't really have anybody that's even in the same like realm as Mike Williams in that regard.
No, but one thing that I noticed about Mike Williams is I've always thought, and a lot of it depends on if you get normal T.Y. Hilton back, but normal T.Y. Hilton doesn't have to go up and get it because he's so good at getting behind everybody.
Yeah, that's true. Healthy T.Y. Hilton can just kind of run behind the coverage for sure.
Healthy T.Y. Hilton has a knack for getting wide open down the field in ways that not a lot of receivers do. So I think that probably will play into it. And I'm assuming that they're not good, that the Colts aren't going to go into this season with the current group of receivers.
Yeah.
I assume there's going to be additions.
Perfect segue into this final part. Like you said, you talked about the column that you kind of put up today about what was still out there and the Colts' needs. You and I talked right before this podcast about receiver needs, and I don't necessarily think they have to go find themselves Mike Williams, but I do think that they need to go find themselves some veteran receivers. I wouldn't mind another big body or a guy who has some jumping ability to be one of those guys, but what do you expect them to do in free agency here now with in kind of as we enter the second week?
Well, so the receiver market has a couple of things going against it that have kind of slowed it down. The receiver market has, number one, Robbie Anderson, who's considered to be one of the one of the best receivers on the market, is taking his time. And I think when he signs, that'll kind of set it for some other people. So I think that's kind of holding stuff back. And I think the other thing is that this draft class is supposed to be the deepest wide receiver draft class in years by maybe a factor of 2. Mike Mayock said he thought there'd be double the amount of first to third round grades on receivers as there normally is in a draft. So that drives the price down. And then I think the third thing that's sort of making this a slow receiver market is just, I mean, not to bash these guys, but there's not a lot of talent, like really, really great talent on the market right now in terms of wide receivers. Even Anderson is a guy who's more of a 50-catch guy, or has been with the Jets. Now, maybe that changes with a better quarterback, but these are guys who Rashad Perryman has kind of scuffled along. He's got some big playability, but it's never been real consistent. And then there's a lot of guys who've had some issues. They've had some flashes and some issues, and so I think you're going to see some signings from the Colts. I don't know when. I think you're going to see 1 to 2 signings of receivers in free agency, but they're going to be. But unless they end up with a guy like Anderson, I think they're going to be more the guys where you're trying to buy low and hoping something good comes out of it.
So where does that put Devin Funchess, by the way? We just talked about good kind of maybe a big body receiver. I don't really see him in the Mike Williams class, honestly. I feel like I kind of see him more as like
no, because he can't get deep the same way.
Right, yeah. I don't think I don't even call it separation. Yeah, I just don't see the jumping ability. He's tall, obviously, but I just kind of like him as kind of like a tight end playing wide receiver in a way, if that makes sense.
We saw some of the jumping ability last year, I think.
Yeah, I just like, but he's like
in training camp.
I just like the box out ability of him. But maybe you're right. Maybe there is more jumping ability there. So my question to you is: the Colts have posted pictures of Phillip Rivers wearing number 17. So is that the end of Devin Funchess?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that there's a chance that there's a chance that he comes back with a different number. I think the bigger reason that he might not be a guy on the roster this next year is because what happened with his collarbone? Did we ever find out that it was fully healed?
I don't know that we ever found out if it was fully healed or not. No.
And so that's a question to me, because Chris Ballard sort of said he broke it in like 5 places. And in this age of needing to, I mean, I guess you can do an X-ray pretty easily and look at it, but I think there's some question about what happened to his shoulder last year. And maybe he comes back. Maybe it's just a money thing. But I think his price would have to come down significantly. Like, I'm thinking like cut it in half.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
For him to be back in Indianapolis.
Yeah. Anybody else on the market that you do like? I mean, again, I kind of like. I may be in the minority. I kind of like Robbie Anderson. I'm not, and I kind of think he's deep playability. He's very, very fast. And like you said, he's a 50 or 60 catch guy, but across from T.Y. Hilton, that's okay. But you don't want to overpay for a guy like that. I don't think he's a star receiver by any means. I just kind of like the fit of what his skill set is. But is there anybody else outside of him maybe that you're intrigued by in terms of if it came with a 1 year $4 million, 1 year $5 million deal?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I guess it just depends with Anderson on what the price is. I think he's probably looking for like something like 4 years and $40 million. I wouldn't do that for him.
Oh no, yeah, that's much. Anderson is not going to get 1 year. I'm not going to look for 1 year. He's going to get more, I think.
So some of these there's some guys that interest me, I think, that are way down the list. Like somebody like Rashard Higgins.
Okay.
Who kind of flashed a little bit with the Browns and then got buried by Odell and Jarvis and all those guys this year after they kind of revamped their receiver core. That's a guy that interests me a little bit.
Sure.
There's guys like there's also guys that I don't necessarily like a ton, but I'm kind of interested in their potential. Rashad Perryman does interest me, but he's got to be cheap.
I like Perryman too. I like Perryman too, again, because I think he's kind of Robbie Anderson's skill set a little bit, but cheaper. And I think maybe you could get him on a 1-year deal as like a, you flashed at the end of the season last year with Tampa when Godwin and Evans were hurt. Maybe you could, if you do it again, you can get paid, kind of a thing. But I don't know. That's an interesting one for me. At least like I said, I like the skill set of what that is. Geronimo Allison is somebody you mentioned in your story. That's not.
I mentioned him as a guy who's played a lot. Has not been. Not a lot of the stuff he did with Green Bay is going to make you super excited, but he has played a lot.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Like I said, I'd prefer Perriman, obviously. You have Paul Richardson in here too, who I am out on Paul Richardson at this point in his career. But yeah, they have some options, and I'm with you. I will say that I expect them to kind of go get at least one, if not two, free agent receivers, and as well as draft somebody. I feel like they need to load up on depth. We all saw what happened last year when they didn't have the depth, and then we talked about T.Y. Hilton's on the wrong side of 30. Paris's injury seemed like flukes to me, but who knows? Maybe something bad. Maybe he gets hurt again, or maybe it's a little bit worse than we thought. Zach Pascal is a good receiver and has come along well, and I don't want to limit what he can do, but I don't know what his maximum potential is as a receiver, but you probably don't want to count on him as anything more than a 3, right? Maybe a 4. And then you don't know what you're going to get in Reese Fountain coming back from injury, and so I think that's a lot of question marks. So I think if you can get yourself a free agent or two, draft somebody, you at least give yourself a chance to answer those questions in a positive way.
Yeah, I think. Well, and you just kind of hope that maybe you get a guy who sort of like some of the defensive line guys they've had in the past, ends up playing better than his previous history goes. He fits with Frank or fits with the right thing, and just sort of sees what happens.
Yeah. Well, anything else? I was gonna ask you now that we're at the end of the podcast here. How is your quarantining going? Your self-quarantining, your social distancing going so far?
Well, I would say that those of you out there who are working at home and have parents or have kids, young kids, that if you hear me moving around when we do these podcasts, it's because I need to help a kid, or also, frankly, help my dog, who always likes to go to the bathroom whenever this is going on.
Perfect timing.
And is currently sitting right behind me chewing on an antler, which makes it hard to hear. So there's a lot more of that going on. The dog is always here. Nitschke's always here. But the kids are not. And so that's a little bit more distracting than I'm used to.
I feel like, I was talking to my wife about this, I feel like every time we get to, she's in school, she's in grad school, and I'm working, obviously, but, I feel like we just meet to eat a lot. We have breakfast together, and then we meet for lunch, and then it's dinner time. I'm like, I feel like I feel like I'm eating more. I know I'm eating the same amount, but does it feel like you're eating more that you're home all the time, or I just?
Oh, I'm eating more.
Oh, you are eating more.
No, I'm 100% eating more. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, it's I mean, again, none of the new stuff says you can't go outside and exercise, so we should, obviously, but it's one of those things where
but free agency ruined that last week. So,
I know.
I have not been on my bike at all since this started. Since free agency started and since we started, social distancing.
Right.
And I've pretty much only been out to walk the dog. In fact, somebody asked me this on Twitter. I was walking the dog on our last podcast because he was starting to get to the point where he was going to break walls if we didn't go exercise a little bit.
Okay.
So it's been a little frustrating. Now that it's the second week of free agency, maybe I can walk the dog or ride a bike a little bit. But yeah, it's been bad food-wise. It's not been good. There's too much food in the house.
Okay.
And too much time in a chair. It's very bad.
That's what it is, right? You're just around food more, and you just see it, and you're like, oh, I might as well just have a snack while I'm waiting for the next thing.
Plus, anyone who has small kids will understand this. They eat 6 times a day, so you're constantly touching the food.
Right.
It's like you're in the pantry way more often.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I would say that I come out of this at least 5 pounds heavier than I was on my way in, which is bad because I had spent some time losing that 5 pounds. It's not looking good. It needs to warm up here, so I can do a little more. I can do a little bit more work on on the old bike trails, so I'm still allowed to do that.
Yeah, you are allowed to go out on a bike, I believe, and like I said, my plan would be to go out for a run here sometime soon. I've enjoyed the runs because it kind of feels like you're doing something you shouldn't be in a good way. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I'm out of the house, and like, oh, like this, I shouldn't be out here. And it feels good. I like it. Like I said, so I enjoy it. I think I've liked running more since this pandemic than I have before, which is not a good thing, by the way. I don't mean that in a positive way at all, but I just like it does feel like an escape, you know?
Right.
So that is that is one way I'm doing it. I am also watching.
And I am serious to all of you people who are just thinking about the dog. He is trying to break this antler in half right now, right behind me.
Well, that's a fun way to spend. I'm watching a lot of bad movies. I've been texting you about them. I watched The Saint last night with my wife. It is a Val Kilmer vehicle, which if you want Joel and I to talk for another 3 hours, so you could ask us about Val Kilmer. But
and I will only be talking about one role.
Tombstone?
Maybe two, but pretty much just one role.
So my wife and I at lunch, sick of talking about like the world ills. We were just like, you know what? We talked about instead why Val Kilmer didn't have the career Tom Cruise did, because they're both like very good-looking guys, very popular in the '80s, both very talented, and it just never clicked for Val Kilmer. I just don't understand. Like, I don't know. It's going to be one of the. I'm going to think a lot about it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. When I'm not thinking about football, this will be on my mind.
Well, I don't have much on that. I just know that I loved him in one movie, and who knows what happens. Just
Tombstone? It's not The Saint. You can tell people that. It's Tombstone, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tombstone is the one.
If you like him in that, I mean, have you seen Real Genius? The 80s movie with him?
No.
Very, very good. Very fun. And then Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Robert Downey Jr. Also really good. You'll enjoy both those. As well as, obviously, Top Gun, which people will know him from. Not Batman. All bad.
Yeah, I almost forget that he was Batman.
Yeah, I actually was reading some trivia because, again, I'm in quarantine, about After the Saint, and apparently he turned down the opportunity to be Batman a second time in order to do The Saint, and as bad as Batman was, that was a mistake. He should have done it again. The Saint is a treat in a lot of ways, and most of them just being it's horribly great to watch. So yeah. Anyway, that is how I'm spending some of my time. You're solving all the Colts roster issues, which I believe is a nobler endeavor. So good for you with your drafts.
Trying to.
Yeah, you're doing great. Doing great. So. But
I'm allowed to trade. I traded like 17 times in that draft that we started this podcast with, which is not really feasible in the real world unless you're the Patriots. Patriots do it.
It's true. No, it does. From what it did, it sounds like it sounded like a Chris Ballard like fever dream. Like if everything went, like he could just be like keep trading back and keep getting great players. That would be everything he'd ever want to do.
Yeah, firstpick.com needs to fix its player board. Needs to move some people up.
See, the unreality of that would make it not as fun for me, but apparently you've embraced it.
No, it's great. It's like playing a franchise on Madden and making it's like how I used to get MLB and I would have these Brewers rosters that were terrible, and then I would make 2 trades and somehow I'd have 3 All-Stars on it. And the Brewers would go from being like the worst team in baseball to awesome. It's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But but in MLB you get to see it play out, and in this you just have to kind of daydream, I suppose, as to how good that would be.
Yeah. Oh well, it's still fun.
All right, you got anything else to add? Any other Val Kilmer takes or draft takes?
No, I think that's it for the day. I'm kind of hoping to. I think it's supposed to be like 48 degrees or so. We're starting to get up to the point where we can kind of go out and not freeze a little bit. Maybe I can get on the bike today. Hopefully. All
right. Well, good luck to you. I am going to maybe I'll go for a run. I'm going to watch more DeForest Buckner film because that has been really fun so far, and hopefully put something together for you guys later down the road. But yeah, all right, that's been it for us on Colts Cover 2. Thanks for joining us. Keep up with everything on IndyStar.com.